What's up, everyone, and welcome to our stream tonight. This is Demo Days, episode number four. Four. We're gonna have a very nice session tonight, and let me real quick see chats. Chat is a bit quiet today. Chat is definitely a bit quiet today, folks. So tonight we have a solo session, right? So I'm gonna be going solo tonight, and we're gonna do it slightly differently than we've been doing for the last cup, right? Since it's solo, I thought it's a Friday evening. Let's have a more casual session, and I'm gonna talk about this as well. I recently got these, so some new tech. I want to talk about this for a sec. I think it's a very interesting piece of tech, but I'll talk about that tonight. We will also be looking at a brand new problem statement. So what we'll do is we have a problem statement from Y Combinator's company directory, right? So you see that in the title. And we've put this together for you in a very nice, interesting looking Figjam that you can use to actually understand this. And together, we're going to walk through this problem statement and just, have a casual discussion around it, maybe, in the chats. But before that, I want to just see a quick chat from you. Let's drop it here in the live chat. If you're here, what's up? Say hello. And those of you who are here, drop a link in the group chat. All right, drop a link in the. Okay. So, folks, where we're going to start. I'm just thinking, where do we get started? Hmm. What's up? What's up, Anthony? What's up, Apurv? How's the weather? Man, it's finally summer here. So, the weather is 16 today. 16 today. Yeah. What's up, R. Venujan? Hey, Apurv. And what's up, Sankalp? Razer? No, these are the Meta Ray-Bans. Sup, V. Hey, Jay. Hey, Soumya. Hey, Pallavi. What's up, folks? Let's get started. So, where I'm going to start today? I'm going to wait for a few more people to join in. But meanwhile, um, I'm going to be, let's start, maybe not here, but today let's start somewhere else. Hold on. Let's browse some Twitter, okay, before we get started. A little bit of procrastination before the work begins. So, just, okay, no YouTube. So, real quick, these are Meta glasses, right? So, let me show you what this is. There is, so very interestingly, I had the first version of Snapchat glasses, right? Like the very first one. I tried those, and that was a couple years back, right? I would say at least 4 to 5 years back. And those were the Snapchat glasses Gen 1. Okay. These. So I literally had to order this from eBay, get it to India, and I had the black ones. Okay, not this one. This is two. I had the first ones, and they were pretty basic in what they could do. Yeah, they could record and they could send it to Snapchat. Very interesting looking footage, though. They had the circular camera thing. These though, new generation, and anyway, I won't talk too much about it. Um, it's pretty fun. I can just kind of record with this. I think more than the recording part, what I'm currently enjoying about these is the sound, right? To have headphones right here in the thing, it's very weird. Music maybe not so great in this, but for podcasts and stuff, this is really cool. And got the transition, so I want to kind of see what this is like wearing. Okay, so folks, let's just do some browsing before we start. Yo, welcome Dimple. Welcome to the new folks who have joined the cohort. Um, let's go through some stuff. Apeksha's case study is out. Congrats, Apeksha, on getting it out. We're not going to be reviewing this on tonight's session, but looks interesting. Looking forward to checking it out. Um, they just published a case study today as well, folks. We got mad publishing happening today, huh? So they just published his solving luggage problems for travelers. Again, not going to be reviewing this tonight, but I'm looking forward to going through it because I've been seeing Tejas, you've been posting snippets of this particular problem statement. Some portfolios on the way, folks. I would love to see your portfolios if they're launching. Right, definitely hype up your portfolios a little bit. It kind of motivates you. Um, yeah, getting a portfolio out is hard. Seeing some sneak peek from projects. This is from Ishita. We've got this fintech app. Um, I don't remember what exactly this one is for. Let's see this instant loan ad. Okay, cool. So what I love is these things that you're seeing here today, folks. Very likely that we're going to be doing actually demo day sessions with some of these projects, right? Not so very interesting, and I'm really looking forward to those. I think this is a kind of a fun format that's kind of still evolving. Looking forward to doing a few of these. Kudos Asta on getting this out. What is this swipe? This one I think is from the build space list, if I remember correctly, right? Yeah, nice, cool, folks. People got work in progress. Nice to see that. Tarun got his case study posted as well. It's in the bootcamp publication on Medium. Nice. Looking forward to going through this one as well. Cool. Folks, if you want to check out some of these case studies, by the way, of course, stay tuned. We're going to be doing these reviews every Friday. But other than that, I would recommend going to, no, not here, browse design work. I would recommend checking this out. You can find a bunch of case studies here. Most of the time, this is up to date. We update this almost every week. And one of the main reasons is we know from our data and based on my observations that recruiters do visit these pages, and this has kind of become a nice way for people who are looking to hire designers to come and discover, right? So any companies that reach out to us as well saying, hey, you're a community of designers, we're looking to hire, this is one of the places where we send them, because this is firstly, it's long form, which is nice to see. I think publishing your work long form really forces you to go into detail um, and actually cover a lot more. So, anyways, that's a note on this. Check it out here. Folks in the chat, I see some more people have joined. I think we'll get started now. What's up, Jay, Soumya, um, Sahil? Cool, guys. Let's begin. Let's jump in. Folks, this as well. I got a few messages from people who enrolled in cohort 9 saying, hey, am I supposed to receive this kit? This, just a quick FYI, this is our graduation kit. So we've been designing this like just as a physical item for every single cohort. We do a t-shirt, like a new t-shirt every time. We have a box, we have a book in this, we've got some design stuff. This is when you graduate. So this is cohort 8 folks, as well as mentors from cohort 8, Arpita in this case. They receive this at the end. Yeah. So folks who are joining, Shubham, for example, what's up, Shubham? Welcome aboard. When Shubham graduates from cohort 9, we would have a different box, right? So another thing I'm looking forward to next couple weeks is redesigning this. Not next couple of weeks, actually, next couple of months with the team, redesigning this, thinking about what new, doing some collabs. Yeah. Ayushman released his portfolio. Ayushman, I checked this out. Pretty cool. Kudos. Let me know how the response was, right? One of the things I'm always very curious to know is how did the launch go? Like, what was it like? What are the interesting people who maybe liked the tweet that you're like, oh, wow, they saw my work? Who are the people who maybe reached out? Maybe you are like, hey, out of these people who replied or reached out, I want to actually just reach out and initiate. Anyway, welcome, Unnati. And Aishwarya also published a case study, and in fact, This one right here is what we're going to be going through today. So switching back to Figma, switching back to Figma, tonight we're going to be designing or going through this kind of mock simulator design process for an app that has AI generated podcasts. So this is a company that I found while doing some research on the Y Combinator directory, right? So these guys are in, let's see, YCW24, right? That's the cohort. So that's the company. And I'm going to give you some context before we jump into the design parts of this, okay? So one thing I want you to realize, this is early stage and it's using a new technology, right? Which is, it's using something that is new, which is um, AI, right? AI, and right now we're in this phase of exploration in AI where different types of media. So we've got AI that does, for example, audio, we've got image generation, we've got language, and as these core blocks, right? So core blocks, audio, video, voice, language. As people assemble these in different ways, we're going to see new applications, right? So what's awesome about right now is there are a lot of consumer apps that people are giving a shot, and we don't know what the end state of a lot of these AI technology is going to be like. But we're going to check out one of these AI companies. So they got into Y Combinator, and for those of you who want some context, Y Combinator is a um, they're in Silicon Valley. They're an accelerator. They do these cohorts of startups every year. I think they do 2 cohorts a year. And they fund the companies with, I think, about 150K USD. And at the end of the Y Combinator program, there is a demo day where founders present to the other investors who are there and maybe raise their next round. So these guys are very early stage. And when I found them, this is what I saw. They had this website. They had a very simple, basic website that I think had just been launched a couple weeks back. We saw this in March. So March is when I took, I think, this screenshot. And their pitch on the page was podcast personalized to your unique interests. And when I saw their page, interesting, but from a design perspective, I wasn't too impressed, right? I saw they had a lot of AI generated artwork, which immediately gave me the AI vibe. But then at the same time, I was like, if you are using this as your hero image, maybe it would be a good idea to just go in there and edit it a bit, right? Like edit this from Kickstart. Like, um, it felt very early, and I was like, okay, I think that's just how it is. We've caught them at a very early stage, and so this was around March, and in May, which is just 2 weeks back, they actually released their version 1.0. So the app actually exists now. This problem statement, though, was um, published even before that, before the app existed. And what the brief was is that PocketPod is a very early stage startup. They want to get into this AI thing. If you were a designer at this early stage company and you had 2 weeks to work on something that can actually help them in an interesting way, right? So make an app. Overall, to give you the context, this was an assignment or assignment slash project, whatever you call it, where we prepared a bunch of problem statements like this. So what you're seeing here, I think this one here is Pocket Pod, but there were a bunch of these across different categories, and people had, were free to choose what they wanted. And so they did a 2 week project on designing this. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be jumping in and looking at some solutions, right? I will also be sharing this Figjam link with you. So stay tuned till later in the video. I'll just drop this in the chat. So you can definitely revisit this. You can go through this in a little bit more detail. And if you are somebody who's also a designer, if you are curious to see what people's design files look like, you're curious to know what are some other projects people are working on. You might be curious to know people who are in a similar kind of let's just say journey as you, right? Maybe you are out of college, you're considering design, or you're already a designer, but you kind of feel like, hey, where do I go from here? What's the next growth stage for me? Or you might be thinking, hey, maybe I should start a career transition to design. Anyway, point being, I'll share this file with you so you can get a little bit behind the scenes as into this, and I think that could give you an idea about whether you are interested in design and what parts of design maybe are most interesting to you, especially if you're somebody who's into startups. Okay. So, my quick question to you in the chat as we are going through this, I want you to answer, what podcast app do you use? What podcast app do you use? And, if you don't use a very solid podcast app, another question, the second question here is, what was the last podcast you listened to, right? Since we are live here right now, since we are, actually sync, let me do some real time research, right? Let me ask you guys. I want to just see what kind of audience we have here. All right. So, folks in the chat, what podcast app do you use? And maybe what was the last podcast you saw? So, let me go to Pocket Pod's website. Hmm. Okay, just going through some chats right now. Just got the kit today. Nice graduation kit. Response was crazy for Ayushman. He launched his portfolio. Got a response from a nice designer. Nice. I see a question from Chitrashri. Chitrashri, maybe watch this video and maybe we'll try to answer this question later. But I think this video should give you an idea of what kind of work designers actually do. Yeah. Hey, Kanika, looking forward. Thank you. Glad you're enjoying the sessions. Okay, let's look at some answers. Okay. Apur says YouTube. Hemant checked out the YC podcast on Spotify. Okay. Seeing YouTube, Spotify. What's up, Ashwin? Good to see you here, Ashwin. Ashwin says YouTube Music. Got it. Google Podcast before they shut it down, right? I think it's shut down now. Apple Podcast. Kimball Musk, Lex Friedman. Lenny's podcast, just product management podcast. No one talks about this, promotes in our design hour. Okay. I guess this is a podcast. Not seen this. Star Talk. Okay. So these guys, now all of you here, you're users of podcasts, right? You've consumed podcasts in the past. I want you to just go through this page. You land on this page and it says podcasts, personalize your unique interest. Like whether it's some Japanese stuff, whether it's some podcast on a PDF. So like books. Okay. Never struggled to find a podcast again. Excited. And here they actually have an example, right? So this is what I wanted to show you guys. When I was doing my research, putting together this problem statement, I saw that, I'll open it here. I saw that they had a bunch of samples on their site. And when I say a bunch of, right, actually just one sample. I thought maybe there were more. But I think on their website, so when you sign up here, I saw some samples, right? I think what I also did was I went to their Twitter or something, and they had shared their some announcements with their demo. So they had shared, oh, this is a June 10th update. So they have a
work here at Pocket Pod, helping make your very own daily news podcast each morning.
That's right, Heather, and we have some pretty exciting news to announce today. The first version of our mobile app is now available for download on the App Store.
In addition to your very own daily news podcast,
if you could do this,
stories,
what would you use it for? Like, would you use this? What would you use it for? Just curious to know. It's a very leading question, I know, but okay, let's jump back to Figma. So this was the status quo, right? This is what we had shared with the 10K folks, the cohort 8 members. And we said, this is all they have. They have an early demo, but it doesn't seem like they have a product yet, right? They just released this product very recently. So design their app and you're free to take whatever explorations you want. Do you want to play it a little bit more conservative, like go safe? Do you want to go a little bit into AI patterns that you've seen, right? Maybe do you want to do something, you know, open exploration, but the constraint is that it's about, I think, a 2 or 3 week timeline. And, you can, of course, make your case study later, but that's the core work. You have to get it done. Um, Back to Figma. Now, some research, okay? We're going to be going through Aishwarya and Simran's project, right? So Aishwarya, career transitioner, Simran joined to level up as a designer. We're going to go through some of the inspo. So real apps curated by Mobbin, right? Mobbin, amazing resource. You guys probably know it already. If not, definitely check it out. 10% happier episodes. Now going through this, I'm sure even though all of you, you mentioned different apps, you might not use the same apps mentioned here, like Luminary and 10% happier, but you see there are some standard patterns. And when it comes to content apps, right? So in the previous session, we did another content app. Those of you who are there, you might remember this, Woori. That one was stories. This one is podcast. Now, things like this as well, right? Like the play screen. Now, there's a lot of standard patterns here. So one of the challenges designing an app like this is you have to be very aware of what the patterns are. Of course, you can innovate, you can do new things, but that can't come at a cost to the functionality of listening to a podcast, right? There is a certain thing people expect where they want a play screen where they can actually move forward and backwards, right? There are some things which are kind of baked into the industry. So usually good idea getting started collecting some screenshots. So the app that you use, the other apps that you've seen, and the purpose of collecting these screenshots is to either now or later be able to identify patterns, and try to maybe even benchmark what do the top podcast apps look like, what do the average podcast apps look like, what is something that only a few have, what is something that all of them have. um, Spotify, I guess this is Spotify on Android. um, hmm. I don't know what this is for. Some screenshots here. Some research, I saw this article which is how Spotify is betting 230 million on podcasts, right? Another suggestion I have for you guys is in your design process, especially when you do have the time for it, you should try to find some reading material that you could refer to, right? So let me show you um, this link right here. Another resource for you guys, this is growth.design. Now, I won't go through the whole thing, but just to show you a bit, this is from, I don't know how old this is actually, but let's see. The Twitter UI looks old, so I think this is a couple years old. Okay. So this, I think, is a UX audit by growth.design, looking into Spotify podcasts, talking about patterns, right? People want certain familiar patterns in the apps that they use, like speed. Okay. One of my favorite parts of the design process is definitely the serendipity of like finding a resource like this. like if I was designing a podcast app and I just came across this, I'd be like, oh wow, I'm so glad I came across, because you get so much distilled learning through these kinds of resources. Um, okay, since I'm on stream now, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Let's jump back to Figma. Hemant says, if I had an AI podcast app, I would use it for studies. Hemant, you're perfect, bro. I would be like, yeah, physics hai, padhao aaj. Padhao, like I don't want to. I don't know if physics is possible, but at least for a lot of theoretical subjects, where there's a lot of reading. Hmm. Who is joining cohort 9? What's up, Shubham? Folks who are joining cohort 9, drop a chat. Okay, so we saw some references, and I don't have the full process here. I won't go through the full design process, but I want to just show you some explorations. Um, I I have the individual access to Aishwarya and Simran's Figma files, but I didn't want to show you guys the exact full thing till they publish a case study of their own. Um, but these are just some glimpses into it. All right. So Aishwarya's explorations were a little bit around figuring out the architecture of the app. What's the architecture? Right? It's useful sometimes think in terms of screens, but usually zooming one level up, it's also useful think in terms of the architecture. Architecture can mean in terms of flow, right? Where do people start and how does navigation happen? Or it could just mean let's just lay down a map of every possible feature and what are the things. And based on this, even if this is not perfect, it helps you prioritize. So you're like, okay, I've laid out a big enough map, but it seems like we should do these on high priority, these maybe later. But I can see a map here. So Aishwarya has, I guess, based on her references that she's gone through, a model of what the app might look like, what the top level tabs might be, and within each page, what she might include. Checking out Simran's exploration. What I have here, Simran started, of course, went through the process. We're looking at a snapshot of her process. Simran started with some low fidelity wireframes. So not exactly on paper, like higher fidelity than that, but black and white, just checking this out. Um, kind of also in a way, if you think about it, laying out the architecture, right? This and this, we're doing it in different ways. And one way I like to think about this, right, is you're progressively building on top of it. When you're designing these apps, you're kind of designing these huge systems that have multiple moving parts. So starting with an exercise like this, whether it's, laying it at a very skeletal level, like you're just describing in words, or maybe a level of higher fidelity where it's, some of the actual UIs, maybe not with the final spacing and all of this applied to it, not the final colors, not the final typography, but still helps you imagine. Now, because earlier you are in your process, you're doing a lot of reading, but you're kind of constructing an image of it, maybe in your sketches, maybe in your head. So I see an onboarding flow here, and then a home page, and then what the core experience would be. Core experience in this case, since it's a podcast app, it would be um, actually listening to a podcast, browsing a catalog of podcasts. Okay. Folks, based on that, any questions before we jump in? Because what I'm going to do next is we're going to jump into the solution and we're going to check out the first project. We're going to check out Aishwarya's screens. Meanwhile, let me get this link ready. Abhinav says, not in a cohort, but learning from this. Good, Abhinav. I'm glad we could do that. Um, you know, with these, like personally, my favorite type of content to do, just as a side note, is long form. because we get to actually build up this kind of narrative, go through a lot of details. And nothing wrong with short form. It's just the I just love this medium so much more. And I think for something like this, which is, you know, we, like the 10K designers folks, have already gone through a classroom experience. And so for me to be able to compress a lot of their experiences and kind of show it here in a very zoomed out way, um, I hope it's useful to you guys. Yeah. This is something that we are trying for the first time after this cohort. We've not done these kind of in-depth streams before. All right. So, folks, in the chat, check it out. I've just dropped the link and I just pinned this link as well. Join in here and we're going to go through some of these solutions. The reason I also share the link is, if you are on this stream, it can be like just opening this link will save this file to your recents in Figma. And so the next time you open Figma, you can always come back here and check it out. And just a heads up, all the previous ones, so we did Apnibus, Alpha Shine, Woori, now we're doing Pocket Pod. These are also available linked in the old videos. Yeah. Okay. Got basic, we got basics burner Figma account and Chitra. Okay, folks, link is right there. Join in. We're going to jump, okay? We're going to go in here. So we're going to, let's just go through in some details. We've got an onboarding here, account creation. One thing you'll notice is this is skippable, right? Good idea doing that. There is a home page. Name comes from here. Some news questions. Okay. So, folks, I think what would be good is we can maybe actually go through the case study, right? So let's go through this case study. I'll drop the link of this also in the description later. Maybe I'll do it right now. Let me get this. Folks, I made it even easier for you. Okay, I dropped this link in the chat. But let's go through. This is the one. And let me switch to this as well. Let's check out the promo. One second. Is it just lagging for me? Or okay. Podcasts. Podcasts. What's the problem? So what she starts with is discovery as a problem, right? How do you have good discovery? And of course, the real reason is these guys want to explore something crazy, which is AI as a feature. So I actually want to see the AI part. I think that's the core part that I'm interested in. Okay, so let's see this. So how do you create a customized podcast? So you pick topics, some tags. Okay. So what I see so far, there are the core part of the app is either you're finding a podcast or you're generating one, right? Finding podcast, my guess is this includes a bunch of other generated podcasts. So if you don't want to generate your own, you can actually listen to others, and we'll see that part in a bit. Other than that, there is this kind of guide, um, which lets you, I think, with some kind of chatbot interface, go through this. Okay. It's the problem with GIFs. Can't wait for them to load. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Figma. Okay, so chatbot kind of interface. Hmm. Let's come back here, guys. Mm. So some things I found interesting. Okay, based on the demo that I saw on their website, it seems like what Aishwarya has gone for as one of the core flows is how do you actually generate demos like that, right? What we just saw on their website was they did have a demo that you could listen to. I think for something like this, which is AI related, it makes sense to, will people really believe that an AI podcast can be good? Given that it's a new thing, you can assume most people have never heard an AI podcast. So, how do you get people on your side? How do you convince them that, hey, it is good? Because, yes, once they create it and if they listen to it, it's great. But can you make that process happen earlier? Hmm. Okay, we've got a walkthrough. I think this makes it easy to browse. Let's go through this. Um, Categories, areas of interest, conversation format. So similar to, a common pattern today, started was a common pattern today is like the chat GPT prompting kind of thing where it asks you this. I think this is a little bit like that, but also includes a bunch of chatbot related patterns, right? So these kind of picked around the 2015, around 2015 or so, we saw chatbots as a UX category kind of explode. And so it's a mix of like just pure open fields, which is it's like you're just prompting, it's zero context, you have to type it all. And so chatbots kind of bridge it in between where they show you some of this UI in between, right? So when you have, for example, uh, let's see this, we've got voice style, we selected the categories, you can set a duration here, so you just got these 4 buttons. Cool. And then you have it, you can listen to it. Mm. Mm. Let me have a look at the chat. Lalit says, why don't we have a stream where we design or choose any complex component and reverse engineer how the particular designer made it that way? Mm, good idea, actually. It's just, yeah, the thing is, we already do this in the sense that we have this thing called TGIF in the cohort, where on Fridays, TGIF, so Friday, we do guest sessions during the cohort where people actually show their Figma files. The main challenge, Lalit, I'm just thinking is whose Figma files will we review? Of course, we've got them, but okay, point idea noted though. Hmm. So, folks, overall, kind of summarizing what I see here, some of the good stuff that, oops, let's wrap up this first one. Some of the good stuff Aishwarya has done is the standard flows. So things like login, um, pretty simple. Like done a good job of taking their current brand, which was I think mostly the color purple, and kind of expanding that out into this illustration style, and taking the purple and applying it across. So good job on that. In terms of what the brief asked for, the brief said, this is a podcast app. They're very early. They don't have any product right now. Can you make their V1 and include explorations on how you would do AI related patterns, right? So you've gone with the brief and done a good job of that. Um, I think the balance that you've maintained, and this is something that's I think one of the challenges with these kind of apps, right, is it's a very standard thing. Like most podcast apps look very similar. So it can be a challenge being like, okay, how much do I just stick to existing patterns? But then my app looks like every other app out there. And how much is there actually some room to innovate? And I think you have a good balance of that. So I see you've included this kind of stuff, right? So you have thought about the core flows. So here, this is the consumption flow where you can actually see, you can skim these podcasts faster. Um, and the predictable parts, which is just like what's the layout, what are the main level top level pages and stuff. I think we've done a good job of that. In terms of the UI, um clean UI, personally I would have gone for maybe a different typeface, right? I think this kind of right now looks like I don't know what this is, but personally I would have maybe gone with something with a little bit more um little bit more personality, right? But then I think it's fine. Okay, not a big deal. Just nice to have. Mm, the core thing here, I think this flow, given that it's AI, this is kind of one of the most important flows here, because this is kind of the core on everything that it rests on. Because without this flow, right, folks, think about it from a product perspective. Without this flow, it's just another podcast app, right? So even if all of this is good, is it good enough for people to switch their habits, switch from whatever they use to this new thing? This is the, let's just say, the differentiator, the thing that makes it different. Um, and good job at this. I think it's a good exploration of the chatbot style. Um, and to be honest, I think given that it's so early, right, talking now a little bit from a business or a product perspective, I think a lot of this rests on, see, interaction with the AI. We can figure out very nicely, right? We can figure out what's the optimal way, what's the inputs we need to get, and see, that part can be figured out. But I think a lot of this rests on how good are their models, how good are their models that are actually generating this. But what you've done is you've designed a good way of interacting with these models. So nice one, Aishwarya. I think definitely you should, reach out to the founders, drop them an email with your case study. I think they would be pretty interested to check it out. Yeah. Let's check out Simran's project now. So Simran also picked up PocketPod. And one thing I definitely like here is I like this typeface, right? It's not it's not the default typeface. It kind of has a bit of personality. She's also used the higher weight of this, right? She's used the bold version also for the font. I think that looks cool. Um, okay. So similar categories and personalization. Hmm. So we got tabs on top to browse by category. One one interesting difference that you'll notice here in Simran's approach is her core tabs here. Like these two are new, right? Like most apps have home and library. These two are the new features here. So instant pod, which I'm assuming is the generator, and snippets. Let's check out. Okay. So snippets is when you want to save stuff. Retention focused feature. We'll talk about that in a bit, by the way, folks. I have a very interesting another thing I wanted to share. Yeah. Snippet flow. Let's look at the screen first. So these are my saved snippets. Okay. This looks a bit odd, mostly because, normally we assume this kind of thing to be progress. But I think in this case, what you're trying to show is that the snippet was taken from this part of the episode of the timeline. It's a bit confusing. Maybe I would try to make this look a little different, these cards. Um, Another thing I would think about is, do I really need to show it as well? Maybe another important piece of information here could be the total duration. Right now, I think you show the start duration, but or start timestamp. But I think there could also be a total duration, right? So is this a 40-second, or how long is the snippet? This card, personally, I would think about, um, mostly because this is looking like a progress indicator, right? And so it's starting in between here. Um, I like this font. It looks very round when you zoom out. Very nice looking. Yeah. Um, Common pattern here, folks. You see this kind of um, you'll see this in a lot of apps. I think Spotify has it very similar to this. YouTube has a similar version, but it's not a floating card. It's actually stuck to the bottom. Okay. A good call, Simran, on including this. I think this is a good idea, which is feedback. Now, good that you've included it. I'm assuming right now it's accessible from here. But as a founder, what I would say is it is quite important that I get this right. So, in fact, as a founder, I would probably say make another iteration which makes this even more obvious, the touch point to give feedback. The reason being, given that these folks are so early stage, they don't know the full extent of how good their technology is, right? So they would probably want this feedback on a high priority so they can improve it, which means this thing making it way more visible here, such that a higher number of users actually give feedback, right? That can be really useful to an early stage startup. And so as a designer, you can really bring that to them. That's something that they really need. Okay. Instant pod. Now I see here. Now, in terms of the pattern, right? Folks, those of you who maybe designed for AI, I'm sure you've started now observing a few AI related patterns. What you see here is a basic prompting flow, right? So similar to, let's say, ChatGPT or a lot of these other AI generation tools, there is a just a prompt box, and then few parameters that you can set, right? Like vibe, and in this case, duration. Now, comparing this to um, Aishwarya's approach, right? Let's talk about some of the UX differences between these two. In this case, the UX flows in one direction. And so the possible negative to think about here is, does this get too long, right? So when developing this, one of the, or maybe when you're prototyping this, one of the things you would want to kind of keep in check is, does it feel way too long, right? Like, does this come instantly, or, does it take, because a lot of, usually with chatbots, there's a lot of micro interactions as well. So you want to make it feel like it's a little bit more instant. But comparing this flow, which is like one at a time, to this one. Now, personally, what I would say is something that Simran, I think you could probably do this as an iteration, is yahan pe, to select this, I need a minimum of 2 taps, right? So 2 taps for this to open and then click, 2 taps for this to open and click. That's 4 tabs for this. And how many ever taps to type this out? So how many ever for this? 4 taps for this, and then one here. I think something you could make easier is this, keep it as it is. Something you could add here is also a voice input to make it faster to type, right? Saying something in voice, you can just save so much time. So maybe you also have a voice input button here. And these, given that you have the full screen to design, something worth thinking about is, can I actually expand these out? So can I actually show them open? Um, let me show you. Let me see if I can find you an example of this. Apple. I'll show you guys an example of this, okay? Meanwhile, in the chat, Rex, what's up, Rex? Anyone here joining C9? Folk, Rex, just check out the chat. A bunch of people here who are joining. So Shubham here is also joining. I think we saw a few more chats earlier here. Okay, what I wanted to show you guys is some of these. So real quick, this is just something we've put together for our research. But I wanted to specifically show you guys a design prompting pattern. Okay, let me find this. I think it's this one only, but mm, let's see. So let's talk about it from here, right? This you see, this is from Apple's recent keynote. The basic screen that we're on, we are what we are in is we are in the new emoji flow, right? Flow to create your own personalized emoji using the new Siri. That's the context here. And the reason it looks like full rainbow and all is because Siri is open, right? Siri is now like this. When I search here, you notice it's though my only input here is typing it out, and I kind of see these previews generate here, right? That's the basic flow here. Here, this one, similar, you type this out, and these tags kind of show up here. So you can individually remove some things. And the input they take here, right? Of course, they take these keyword inputs, but the other one they take is this one, which is choosing a style. And they also have one for, it's not here. It's not in this file. This thing here, right? The suggestions thing that they're showing. I wanted to show you guys that. Yeah, here we go. Suggestions. So it's all open up here and you can actually click this. Of course, you can also click these. So now looking at this screen, breaking this down, you're still in a create flow, but this is previous one was for emojis. This is a little bit more complicated. It's for images. What it does is the core, this thing is just actually typing it. I would assume they also have audio, although there's no icon showing here. Core ways you describe it. But the other inputs here is the person. So clicking this, you can probably open something which shows all from your photos and you select somebody. But it also shows some people here, right? These are people maybe who are most shown. And so very high likelihood that you click it. It shows a few, there are probably a lot of categories, but it shows 4 up front here. 5, I guess. So similarly here, I think one thing you could do for sure, Simran, is open these out. Maybe show me as a strip of things that just open here, because there are like 6 of them. So if you could do maybe a similar pattern where it just circles, right? You have 6 that you can browse like that. I think that makes it 1 tap instead of 2 taps, right? So in this, for this particular element. Similarly for duration, you could do the same. Another suggestion here though is the way you selected this 30, 45, 1 hour. I don't know if this is the best way, right? Like 30 being minimum, I don't think is the way it should be. I think minimum should be 5 minutes or something, which is I am evaluating, is this worth it? And so my suggestion in this case, it should probably be 5, 15, 30, 1 hour or something like that. But also this, yeah, you can expand it out, right? Like that kind of optimizes this input here. Cool. Then you generate it, and then you have this simple flow, right? Clean. Something to think about here. Okay, yeah. And then you got the feedback thing. I think a lot of this, again, the thing I was saying earlier as well, right? The success of this product, I think a lot of it depends on the tech, which is we are kind of right now designing the way you interface with the model, but the actual model and how good that is um, also is important. Some small detail I would think about here. Okay, so you have added the segments. That's good because segments are a good way to let people browse faster. Um, what's the rest of the screen though? Let's see that. Okay, you got transcript and then summary. Nice. Another good thing I think you've done is good idea including the transcript and summary, mostly because it's kind of an expectation at this point, right? And overall, these three things here, which is this making this segmented, including a transcript that actually goes like this, as well as a summary, which you don't have to read the transcript, you can just read the summary. Good use of, firstly, good to make it. Let me say this clearly. What's good is that it makes it easy to actually evaluate. Is it actually good? That's important for a new product like this. Number two, it makes it more skimmable. Okay. So, folks, those are our two projects for today. Simran and Aishwarya. Real quick, kudos to both of them in the chat. You can drop it now. Kudos to both of them for working on this. And kudos to Aishwarya also getting her case study out. Yeah. Now, one more thing I want to talk about, right? Looking at this now as a designer or as somebody who's working on concept projects or maybe working on these kind of projects, like for example, I know a lot of you are enrolled in Build Space, right? Build Space is like this hacker thing. It's kind of a cohort where you build some stuff together. Anyway, point being, a question a lot of people have is how do I pick a project idea? And in this case, let's say you're doing it purely to learn design. How do I pick something that is not so predictable that people look at it and they're like, oh, I mean, what's new in this? It can't be too predictable. Even something predictable can be hard to design because it's still a lot of screens. You still have to think about and go through. But you don't want it to be too predictable such that people look at it and be like, oh, I mean, that's so standard. Like, there should be something exciting about it. But then the balance you have to maintain is that predictability, but the innovation, which is using maybe a new technology like this, right? Using these text to voice models in interesting ways. Now, this is innovation. The reason I say so is this technology came out recently, and a lot of the research you would need to do for this is check out demos. Check out demos of what other people are doing using these technologies. Given that these technologies are new, there might not be very widespread mainstream things out there. So you do have to find a lot of these niche demos. That's what it comes to when it's designing early stage. Now, talking about early stage, when you're also working with early stage startups, right? Another way you can think about it is, can I help this company, right? This company that is started, they got into Y Combinator. Their top priority is testing out and validating that concept, right? So, can I help them with things like prototypes, right? This, for example, is a nice prototype that they can use to actually think about what we should be doing, right? So, for example, this here, I think we missed this, we skipped this flow. But this is, for example, a non-chatbot flow for creation, right? Anyway, point being, for an early stage startup, what do they want? Number one, they want to validate whether their concept works. Number two, they want users, right? They want, once their app is out, to actually gradually grow. And like looking at this, they launched May 30th, 2 days ago, guys, right? It might feel like this is removed, but these are actually this is not a concept project, right? These are actually two real humans, two founders, Davis and Ross, who've probably quit their jobs to work on this, right? So, as a designer, put yourself in the shoes of the founders in this case. You are designing it for them. It's their company's success and failure that kind of relies on this, right? Um, 2 days ago, they pushed out bug fixes and improvements. But what's important to them, of course, is um, seeing prototypes, right? Seeing their vision and all of this translated into these explorations. But I think what's also important to them is that you are able to think in a little bit product and business terms, right? So, this, for example, I think some of you might be familiar with this. I mean, we teach this in the actual simulator sessions at 10K Designers, but this is a simple product framework, right? A lot of product managers think from this perspective. A lot of founders also think from this perspective. What it basically means is for you as a designer is, can I map the parts of my design and the parts of my design process that correlate to each of these stages that you think about as a business? So, acquisition, this would mean, a very simple example of this would mean, what is my basic proposition? Whether that's on my website. So, as a designer, you could have also designed the landing page for them, right? It's a very basic landing page. But thinking about the proposition, it can also mean the App Store screenshots, right? How exactly do you convey the core things here? Besides that, each of these stages, right? There's a lot of stuff they need to think about. So, as a designer, what else can you do? Activation. Can you map what activation means to your design process? Usually, it relates to the onboarding. It relates to how do I actually sign up users, but show them the value up front, right? How do I get them to the core parts of my app? You can also, for example, as a designer, the thing we were talking about, which is how do I not become too predictable, right? Predictable as in, oh, this is a podcast app. And if I go too innovative, then it's like, hey, maybe the functionality is suffering. So the balance that you need to maintain between established patterns, like just core functionality stuff, and the innovative stuff, right? The AI features and things like that. You always do need to maintain that balance. And another idea for you on how can you make it unique, right? When I talked about the innovation parts, check out demos for sure. Do more prototypes of like core AI stuff, right? So, for example, something like a chatbot, very easy to prototype this, where it feels like it's a real chatbot, right? Even something as basic as just using a Figma prototype. But go on niche flows then. That's another thing you can do. So let's say referral here. Referral flows are a part of every single app, right? When it comes to podcast app, what does referral look like? Well, it could mean that I really liked this episode, and so I want to share it. Now, sharing it, that's also a feature to be designed. Like just sharing, should it just share a link? Like on WhatsApp, it just shares a link to the podcast. Should it add title and then link? Can I also generate a link directly to the snippet? Can I share the snippet as a voice preview? Is there some other way of doing it? Right. For example, Spotify also has this feature where they have this kind of QR code thing. Right. They've got that audio thing where you can even scan it with your camera and you know what song that is. Anyway, point being, for a podcast app like this, something you could also explore if you want to make it different is, can I design an interesting or unique referral mechanism that can help acquire users? The core reason for this is, as a startup, yes, you want to grow, but a very efficient way to grow is the existing users. Can I get them to invite other people? Which means really making it very obvious and like really pushing for invite a friend, right? Or think about what are some opportunities where people would probably share, right? Like the snippets feature that we saw. I think a core part of this, like if you had to make a change to this, what I would suggest is make sharing very, very obvious, right? After the snippet has been created, make it obvious to share. So, for example, you have done it though, which is good that you thought of this. You've included this share button here. You click it, it opens up a bunch of options. But another thing you could do is add a card on top that makes it very, very obvious to share. Or it says, like, let's say you want people to share more on iMessage. It could also show send an iMessage preview, or make it like, think about how can I incentivize sharing, right? A good way to also do this is check out patterns, right? So on Mobbin and a lot of these sites, in fact, we talked about Mobbin today, we talked about growth.design as well. On growth.design, you can actually filter by show me case studies from other apps that have interesting referral flows. Or even just going on Mobbin, you could go to Mobbin and search for sharing related flows or inviting related flows. Um, so, point being, if you're designing an app, another way you can think about it, right? I think a lot of people think in terms of features, but another way to think about it is think in terms of outcome. What exactly do I want the business outcome to be in terms of these stages? Yeah. All right, guys. So I hope you got this file. Okay. The link is in the chat. Yeah, I see a bunch of people got it. Right. The rest of you, I would just suggest opening up the link so it's saved. But you can really check this out later too. Other than that, I don't see any questions. We can do some back and forth. Yeah. Aishwarya is on stream. Awesome, Aishwarya. Thanks for some. Thanks for work. Thanks for submitting. Glad we could review this today. Yeah. Mm. ठीक है, guys. क्या हुआ? Should we wrap up? Any questions? Anything you guys want to discuss? What I want to do is I want to check out what Pocket Pod is doing next. What are they up to? Quick question to you guys. Are there any have you guys seen any other AI related podcast apps? Are there any good ones out there? Of course, for music, I know there is Suno AI, right? Just to show you guys some, if you guys want to play out with some of these, right? You got music AIs like Suno, so I can actually generate one here. You've got other music ones like Udio. I don't know why they have such Indian names. Suno and Udo. Are both of these by Indian founders? Like, what's the reason? Can somebody tell me? Why do they have such Indian names? Suno and Udo. Udio. Okay. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's supposed to be like studio. So like Udio. Suno is definitely Hindi reference though. Listen. But personally, I love seeing these new music apps because, one of my first startup um, was also a music app, right? This one. In fact, I mean, these are such cliches though in the music app space. Suno, that means listen. Listen is what we named this, which is LISN. दिखाता हूँ. LISN. This was our music app's name. Website's not up anymore though. Let me show you guys this. Personally, I mean, it's so far back now, but point being, for a while, right? YC, a lot of YC companies over the last couple of years had gotten so B2B. I don't know if you guys noticed this. There were so few consumer apps coming out in the last couple of years, right? I think this batch, the recent one, lot of consumer apps, and I think one of the big reasons is that with all of these AI models and stuff, there's new possibilities. In fact, this is the kind of thing that we should probably work on now. I won't, but like it doesn't seem like that far back. 8 years ago, right? This could be a really good one today. In fact, just on a side note, if we had to launch this today, it would in fact be the main thing we would do is instead of using Spotify and SoundCloud as the source. So real quick. So this was just to talk about some of the design stuff we said, right? This was our referral. So if somebody sent you a track, we would generate our own URL with this, such that it says name of the person, their photo, sent you a track, and then download to listen. You could also listen to a 30-second preview. So this is just an example of a referral feature. But then this, like the design of this page, it influences how many people actually sign up, right? So this is what actually I had built. So I was one of the founders of this. And what we back then built is you could listen to in chat. Um, Let me show you guys. In chat, you could have a playlist and you could listen to this synced, like you're listening in the same room. But one of our biggest problems that we ran into was we were using Spotify and SoundCloud as the source. Problem is back then Spotify didn't exist in India. So most of our users were in the US where Spotify Premium existed. In fact, you needed Spotify Premium. SoundCloud, yeah, great, but SoundCloud doesn't have everything. And back then we were really not able to get any other music APIs to use. And so while our experience was great, right? Like it was actually fun to listen to it. The biggest challenge that I mentioned, so this was 6 years ago. I wrote this article when we were shutting it down. The biggest challenge was okay, I actually don't even remember this article, what I wrote, but biggest challenge was we were dependent on those other APIs, right? So Spotify Premium, that kind of throttled the number of people who could download. If you didn't have Spotify Premium, you could only listen to SoundCloud. But launching this today, what I would do different is I would make this purely AI. So instead of just searching for a song, you would generate a song and then you would send it. And then once you've sent it, you'll be able to see what your friends have sent. So you could see your library here. And you could also maybe then see, your active session and you're listening to something. Like Back to Barack, obviously this is not a real song, right? It's a whatever parody. But then this is the kind of shit I would actually generate with Udio or Sunio, right? Like I would say, generate me a Bring Me the Horizon song called Back to Barack, and it's about Obama. Like that's exactly probably the kind of shit you would generate with Sunio and Udio. Yeah. Rex says, joined C9, excited to learn from you. Excited, bro. Excited to, over the next, starting July, spend two, 2 or 3 weekly sessions with all of you folks who have joined C9 and actually do this kind of stuff, right? Go through these startups and talk about how the hell these products are designed. Hmm. So this is exactly what we do. Okay, just to give a heads up to Rex and all of you who are considering joining or have joined, we're starting this in July, right? We're going to do this for 4 months, like just straight up. Hey, what's happening here? This should be July, August, September. July कहाँ चला गया? Okay, July, August, September, October, right? What you're seeing here, this is one of the problem statements from month 3, actually. This is the startup simulator assignment that you just saw. The design studio simulator, we went through a few of those as well. Some of the website assignments, that's the month 2 we do. Month 1 may we do a Figma warm-up. If you already know Figma, that's actually a big advantage that you will have in the cohort because it means you can actually hit the ground running, right? Making stuff right from the beginning. We do have beginners who are new to Figma. And so this assignment is kind of in between for both. It's a warm-up. But this is also when we do a lot of our core principles. And then month 2, month 3, month 4, there's a lot of live sessions where it's me and Janil. Janil is my co-host. He's based in the US. He works at a B2B company there. 10 plus years of experience. And so both of us, every Wednesday, every Saturday, and of course we have some TGIF. These are like guest sessions where we normally do show and tell, right? So for example, let's say we have a mentor from ADP list. They're going to do a guest session where they show how the homepage of ADP list was designed and the actual Figma files. So that's the kind of stuff we do. So in a cohort, Fridays usually are for that. Wednesday and Saturday are the sessions with me and Janil. But enough promo. In fact, we're almost full already with applications. So I would definitely want to see some more of you. I would definitely want to see some more of you in the cohort. And so if you're ready to do this kind of stuff for the next 4 months, I think this could be a good thing. And again, guys, what I will say here is that it's not that you can't do this yourself, right? Let me present this other side as well, which is Man says, is there a platform to find new startups? How can we find them and work for them? Man, the thing is, see, my sources to bata sakta hu. I know, like, you can look up your story and Shark Tank and all this, and you can maybe discover startups. But the main challenge is that how do you know what a startup needs, right? I think that's the big challenge. How do you know what they need? Like how can you not get into the situation key you're designing something and you're like, I mean, I don't know if they actually need it or not, or I don't even know how to say that, right? So my suggestion would be, these, for example, I personally got this from Y Combinator. So Y Combinator has a directory jahan pe you can actually browse. So I would definitely say, yeah, this you can check out. But if you're in the cohort, I will, and these are literally handpicked by me. And when I say handpicked, yeah, it takes me hours to actually combine, 33 briefs per assignment. Like I do this manually. But if you're in the cohort, you can definitely pick one from here. Otherwise, definitely check out these directories, right? That's a good way to discover a lot at once. Another interesting way I can suggest could be just LinkedIn, right? Be a little bit curious. I think it goes a long way being a designer, which is be curious, right? What are people working on? Like, for example, even 10K designers, what kind of apps do people work on? That's something you should be curious about. What do their Figma files look like? Um, you know, what are the types of companies out there? What are the different domains that they work in? What's the difference amongst all of them? Right. So I would say just be curious, because what that does is when you're browsing Twitter or when you're browsing LinkedIn, you will see somebody's profile and see where do they work. Go visit their the LinkedIn company page. You will find, for example, PocketPod, and you will see their website. And now look at their website and be like, okay, interesting. Let me try to understand the company. So you're like, okay, they're based in SF. It seems like they're two founders. This is what they're trying to pitch. But I think they are early stage. How do you know that? Observations karo, right? Go through their design. Make observations like, what would you change, right? What is something that can be improved? For example, I mentioned that this kind of feels low trust, right? It feels like these might not be good podcasts. And to put this big up here, and if my users see this and they're like, "Arey, this is going to be AI slop," that's a very negative thing for a startup, right? So you think in those kind of design terms, and this is all on the internet. It's just you have to be a little bit curious to actually dig a little bit through the surface and find it. Yeah. Ashwin says, "Hey, I applied for C9, didn't hear back. Should I reapply or should I have been rejected?" I think Ashwin, I would just suggest submitting a fresh application. I'll take a look as well. It could be because your application slipped through. Although my guess is, I mean, we would have sent the rejection if that was the case. So I'll take a look into this, Ashwin. Thanks for the heads up. But I would say just fresh application is probably the easiest way to go. Um, let me look into it today, though. Yeah. Shubham says, "Are you going to Figma config?" Yes, I am going to Figma config, guys. This banner up front, the banner that you see when you open Figma, I fell for it. I was like, I gotta go. I want to shoot some content and stuff there. I don't know what exactly I will do. But yeah, should be fun. I've never actually been to Figma config, so this will actually be my first time. Yeah. Cool, guys. Thanks a lot for joining today. With that, I'm going to wrap up the stream. We will do another episode next Friday. I think I leave next weekend for Figma config. I will also try, by the way, to share with all of you some updates from Figma config, right? So I'm not sure how exactly I'm thinking about it, whether I should use Twitter for this or should I do more reels. But I do want to share some updates. The reason why is I think config this time there are going to be a lot of AI updates, right? That's my guess. The Apple one It just happened, right? And we saw the kind of features Apple Intelligence announced. My guess is Figma has also been working on a lot of AI, like small workflow related stuff in their app. Right, so I am actually curious. From config, I'll share some stuff with you guys. Yeah. In fact, I think I will do a live stream from config as well. So that should be a fun one. Stay tuned for that. Okay. I see a question from Rex. What should we prepare before cohort? Good question, Rex. My suggestion, get good at Figma, like to whatever extent you can. And what I just mean by that is practice, right? Make stuff in Figma. You should be able to make a screen that looks good, right? Like just be good at Figma. I think that's a big advantage you have. Reason being, month one, you will actually be able to make a lot of stuff, right? If you don't know Figma too much, or if you're new to Figma, it takes you maybe a month to kind of get comfortable with it. So if you already know Figma to a good extent, it definitely helps a lot. Other than that, I would suggest um, I would just suggest, check out these streams. I think these streams are a good, interesting way to think about. Like it just kind of gets you in that headspace for design. But those would be my main suggestions. Right? Get good at Figma because the main stuff actually only starts when we actually begin. Right? Session one in July when it starts, that's when it actually begins. So most of the stuff will happen then. Yeah, that would be my suggestion. Okay, guys, chalo. Nice session tonight. See you in the next one. Bye bye. See ya.